Welcome to the Investor Fuel Real Estate Investing Show, where I interview the nation's top real estate entrepreneurs, industry leaders, and other amazing entrepreneurs to help educate and inspire you to take your business and your life to the next level. My goal is to add tremendous value to you during every single episode of this show. If you get value, I'd love it if you subscribe on your favorite podcast player, subscribe on YouTube, and my very favorite, please share this with your community so we can impact even more entrepreneurs. Let's start today's show. Hey everybody, welcome back to the show. I'm here with the one and only Jay Conner today. We're going to be talking about how to raise private money, like right now, what's working in this market. So Jay, welcome to the show.
Oh my lands, Mike, thank you so much for inviting me to come along and talk about private money because this is the subject I'm so passionate and excited about. And the reason for that is private money has had more of an impact on mine and Carol Joy's real estate investing business than any other strategy that we've employed. I tell you, it's because of that I've never missed out on a deal that I wanted to do for not having the funding ever since February 2009 when I started raising private money.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So I know there's a lot of great, we're going to talk about the differences between what is private money versus hard money because a lot of folks intermingle those things. And I would say the truth is having flipped hundreds and hundreds of houses, I've mostly used private money, friend and family money, friends of friends and things like that. And it's great once you kind of get those relationships locked in because they don't want you to pay it back. Like they want to keep their money busy, right? And so, and they don't have well, I don't want to say they don't have as much emotion, but the banks, your relationship at the banks might not have all the control, right? If you're working with hard money lenders or even local banks, like they have mandates sometimes that are passed down that they can't really control where things are going. So excited to talk about this. Jay, before we jump into the meat and potatoes here, tell us a little bit about you and your background.
Sure. Well, my wife, Carol Joy, and I, we live here in a very, very small town, small market here in eastern North Carolina. It's called Morehead City, Atlantic Beach. We only invest in 2 counties. And our total target market's only 40,000 people. And so there's a big argument to be made to be a big fish in a small pond. I've been full-time here investing in single-family houses primarily since 2003. We do 2 to 3 deals a month, not a big volume. However, average profits the last 12 months are $86,000 per transaction, per deal.
Wow.
I don't share that $86,000 figure to brag in any kind of way. It's just to make a point. And that is, if you are the dominating force and you've got consistent marketing in a small market, then you can dominate that market and you don't have to deal with all that competition that's in the, bigger cities.
Yeah,
So
that's
I was
amazing.
raised in the mobile home business, manufactured housing. They used to call them trailers and wobbly boxes, but the financing for that product by and large went away in 2003. I knew I wanted to get into single family houses ever since that time, when I started in 2003. And you know what's interesting, Mike, is a big part of my story is from 2003 until January 2009, the only thing that I knew to do to get my deals funded was go to the local bank or mortgage company, get on my hands and knees and put my hands underneath my chin and say, please fund my deal. And, the bank would make me pull up my skirt and show all my personal assets. And I had to get my credit score pulled and show my financial statement and all that. And Mike, that worked out okay for the first 6 years, from 2003 to 2009. But in January 2009, everything changed, Mike. Everything changed in January 2009. I was sitting here at this very desk, and I picked up my telephone. Now, we still have handsets and cords in North Carolina. A lot of people haven't even seen that in a while. But I picked up the phone, and I called my banker. His name was Steve. Now, this was January 2009. And I called up Steve. Steve had funded a ton of deals for me for 6 years here in our local market. And I told him about these 2 houses that we had under contract to buy. And Mike, I learned like that over the telephone that my line of credit had been shut down with no notice. I said, Steve, what in the world are you telling me? That my line of credit is closed. We've got a great relationship. We've been doing business for 6 years. I got a great credit score, never late on payments. Why is my credit line shut down? He said, Jay, Don't you know there's a global financial crisis going on right now? I said, no, but you just gave me a financial crisis. I don't have a way to fund my deal since you've cut me off. He says, well, we're not loaning money out to real estate investors anymore. So I put my phone on the handset, and Mike, I sat here and I sat here for a moment, and I asked myself a very important question. And I want to share this question with you and your audience. This question that I asked myself will help fix any problem anybody's got going on in their life. I don't care if it's financial, health, career, relationships, it doesn't matter. Help fix their problem. By the way, these people running around saying every problem is an opportunity. I want to be like the Kool-Aid guy and run into the brick wall. That's the most stupid thing. I didn't have an opportunity. I had a problem. Let's face the facts, right? Now that problem became an opportunity, but at the moment it's a problem. So here's the question I asked myself. I said, Jay, who do you know that can help fix your problem? I'm not having any more funding for your deals. And I immediately, the power's in questions. I immediately thought of my good friend Jeff Blankenship, who lived in Greensboro, North Carolina at the time. He was investing in single family houses. I picked up the phone, I called Jeff, and I told him what happened. He said, Jay, welcome to the club. I said, what club is that? He said, the club of having the bank shut down your line of credit. I said, well, Jeff, how are you going to fund your deals? He said, well, have you ever heard of private money? I said, no. He said, have you ever heard of self-directed IRAs and how people can take their current retirement funds and transfer it over to a self-directed IRA company and invest that money and loan it out to us, and we pay them interest and they earn either tax-free or tax-deferred income? I said, Jeff, what in the world are you talking about? I don't know what you're talking about. I said, what is private money? He said, well, there's this gentleman down in Jacksonville, Florida, by the name of Ron LeGrand, that says he can teach us how to get private money. I said, well, what is it? He said, I don't know, but Ron says we can get a lot of it. So that's why I went to my first real estate investing seminar after being in this business for 6 years to learn about private money. So I went to Ron LeGrand's seminar, learned about private money. I came back home, Mike, and you know what I did? I put on my teacher hat and I just went about teaching people. My teacher hat says private money teacher. And I just went about teaching people, first of all, that I go to church with, they're in my cell phone, my own connections. I started teaching people what private money is and my program that I put together. I decided what interest rate I was going to pay, how they could get their money back in case of an emergency, maximum loan to value, and all that. And I just started teaching people in my own network what private money is and how they can get high rates of return safely and securely. As a result, I was able to raise a couple of $1 million in less than 90 days by just teaching the opportunity. So instead of going to the local bank and asking for a mortgage, in this world of private money, we're offering a mortgage or offering an opportunity.
That's great. Yeah. And there's a lot of people, and I think I know what you're going to say here, but there's a lot of people that you probably work with that are not, they don't have business cards. They don't think of themselves as a lender. They're not a lending company. They're just maybe wealthy individuals, or maybe not all that wealthy, but they've got some money to put to work and they're afraid of the stock market, or they want something that's a little more tangible, or they want to put it with somebody that they know, like, and trust, or whatever. Right. So maybe tell us a little more about what is like private money. How does that compare to other, how do you compare it to, hard money or local banks or whatever? Like, what's the definition of private money in your world?
Yeah, well, what you just said is a very, very important point. And that is, these are just private lenders are just regular people. These are individuals, human beings that are looking or would love to have a way to get a higher rate of return safely and securely. Maybe they got their money in the local bank in a certificate of deposit. And, when I say I put on my teacher hat and started sharing this with just people in my own network, I've got 47 private lenders right now, Mike, that are funding our deals, loaning money out on our real estate deals. 47 individuals. Here's what's interesting. And by the way, if you're listening to this show, you don't need 47 private lenders. You just need one or two to get started. But what's interesting is, Mike, not one of these 47 people ever heard of private money, private lending, self-directed IRAs. None of them heard about it.
Yeah.
Until I told them about it, right?
Yeah.
And so what makes private money and hard money so different? And when I say hard money, I'm talking typically institutional money, hard money lenders, hard money brokers,
Yeah.
is that when you're borrowing institutional money, whether it's a bank, mortgage company, hard money, whatever, they make the rules. They make the rules. I mean, that's the traditional way of thinking as to how to borrow money. The traditional way of thinking of how to borrow money is whoever's got the money makes the rules. That's the traditional way. But now let's switch that 180 degrees. In my world of private money, guess what? We make the rules. The borrower makes the rules. We set the interest rate. We set the length of the note. We set the frequency of payments, the whole 9 yards, to where, and the reason this works is because if I'm borrowing money from an existing private lender that's already been doing this, then they already know this world. That's a negotiation conversation. But in my world, as to how I do private money and my community members, the way we do private money, is we lead first with a servant's heart by teaching the opportunity. And then we separate conversations between the opportunity and then having an actual deal to fund.
Yeah.
So, and I know you can relate with this, Mike. I mean, you've raised millions in private money. If you're talking to a new potential private lender in your own network and you talk about a deal in the initial conversation, you already sound desperate without even trying to sound desperate. And so here's a writer downer. Desperation has got a smell to it, right? Desperation's got a smell to it. The worst time to be raising private money is when you need it for a deal. So, Mike, let me take a moment and share, and then I'll get over to more of those differentiations between private money and hard money. Let me take a moment to share as to how I get my deals funded without ever asking for money and never pitching a deal. So, as I said, we want to separate the conversations between a new potential private lender, people that you already got an association with. You go to Rotary Club with them, you go to church, you play golf, whatever. You teach the opportunity first, the program, with no deal attached to it. And then when you have a deal to fund and they've told you how much money they got to work with, I call them up with what I call the good news phone call. Well, what in the world is the good news phone call? Well, Mike, let's you and me do a quick little role play right here. Let's pretend that, Mike, that you and I have known each other for a while, which of course we have. But, let's say we've known each other for a while and you didn't know anything about private money. Maybe we go to church together or whatever. And I've told you about private money, and I come to find out that you've got $150,000 in a former 401k at a former employer, and you're not happy with what that's doing in the stock market. I've introduced you to the self-directed IRA company that I recommend. You've moved that $150,000 over to the self-directed IRA company I recommended. And I've told you I'll put your money to work for you just as soon as possible. So you moved it over, and now you're waiting for my phone call. So a week or two goes by, and I call you up. Mike, I want to share with you right now the exact script that I say over the phone to get my deal funded without ever asking for money, without pitching a deal. So here's the script. I call you up, you answer the phone, we have a little chit chat, and then I say, Mike, I have got great news for you. I can now put your money to work. I've got a house under contract here in Newport, North Carolina, with an after repaired value of $200,000. Now, the funding required for the deal is $150,000, which matches up to what you've got at your self-directed IRA. Closing is going to be next Tuesday, so I'll need for you to wire your funds to my real estate attorney's trust account by next Monday. I'm going to have my attorney email you the wiring instructions. That's the end of the conversation. The most stupid thing I could ask is, Mike, do you want to fund the deal? Of course you want to fund the deal. And the reason you want to fund the deal is for 3 reasons. Number 1, you trusted my recommendation. You moved your money over to the self-directed IRA company because I recommended it. So you already did that. Number 2, I'm not going to bring a deal for you to fund unless it matches the criteria of the program that I already taught you. I'm not going to max out 75% of the after repaired value, etc. So you know the deal's going to match the program I already taught you. And
Right.
thirdly, you're ecstatic to fund my deal because you're not making any money until I put your money to work. And so I'm ethically obligated to invest your money. So that's why it's just that natural flow of teaching and then the good news phone call. Back to your question. Sorry, I digressed.
No, this is great. So when you talk, like, how do you start that conversation with potential future lenders? Like, how do you bring that up? And I guess, and you know, you might be a little bit different than some of the students you have or people that are listening to this right now. Like, what are some common ways that people can kind of start those conversations, planting those seeds, whether it's at church or through a friend of a friend or at a wedding or on social media even?
It's funny you bring up the wedding. A few years ago, I was at a wedding and I was at the reception at a 8-top table, round table, eating mince and cake and drinking punch. And I got to meet this lady whose husband had just retired from being a dentist, and he had a problem having $700,000 that he didn't know what to do with. He became a private lender. Anyway, I love, how do you start conversations? Well, there's the direct method and there's the indirect method. So let me start with a short story of how you start a conversation using what I call the indirect method. My very first $500,000 that I raised after being cut off from the bank, I used the indirect method. I didn't know that's what it was called. I later named it that. But here's what I did. I came home. I had my private lending program put together as to what I was going to offer, the interest rate. By the way, I've been paying 8% ever since February 2009 with no points. Same thing. February 2009, summer 2025. Same thing, 8%, no points. Anyway, so I had my program put together. So indirect method. It was a Wednesday night at 7:30. Carol Joy and I went to Bible study, as we always do, on Barber Road at the Morehead City Church of Christ. And I walked into the foyer. I was looking for a gentleman named Wayne. Now, Wayne and I had known each other for a while. And I walked up to Wayne and I said, Wayne, I'd like to visit with you confidentially for a few minutes after Bible study. You're going to have a few minutes. He said, sure. So we got together, went down to the nursery, shut the door after Bible study there in the church building. And here's exactly what I said to Wayne using the indirect method. I said, Wayne, you know everybody in this town. And he did. He was the original Zenith television dealer in Morehead City, North Carolina. Now, for those of you that are listening and you never heard of the Zenith television dealer, that means that you are too young to remember life before Walmart came to town. Anyway, so Wayne, he had sold televisions to everybody in town. He'd put them in the hospital. And actually, with the Zenith television dealer, you bought your TV from him. He'd finance your TV. He'd repair your TV. Anyway, Wayne knew everybody. So back to my script. I said, Wayne, you know everybody in this town. I said, you're all connected with the Rotary Club. You know everybody. I said, Wayne, I need your help. Right there's the writer-downer. That's the indirect method. I said, Wayne, I need your help. I said, you see, I've now opened up my real estate investing business by referral only to people that I know and trust. And here's how I need your help. When you run across somebody that's complaining about low interest rates in the local bank and certificate of deposit or the volatility of the stock market, would you refer them to me, because I'm now paying insane high rates of return in my private lending program to my investors? If you would refer them to me, that'd be great. What do you think Wayne said? Wayne said, well, now, Brother Jay, what you got going on there? I said, well, Wayne, are you saying that you might be interested? He said, well, I might be interested. I said, well, why is that? He said, well, we're not earning much money in the local bank and we're losing money in the stock market. He said, what kind of rate of return are you paying? I said, well, that sort of depends on the deal. I said, what sounds high to you? He says, well, we're earning 3% in the local bank, and that's what it was in a CD in 2009. It's already back to that now. He says, we're losing money in the stock market. He says, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6%. I said, Wayne, I can't pay you 5 or 6%. I said, but I can pay you 8%. He said, put me down for $250,000. And so the next afternoon, Thursday afternoon, I went to Wayne's home and I sat down with he and his wife. And what did I do? I had on my teacher hat, right? All I'm doing is teaching the opportunity. And remember, we make the rules. So I'm teaching the interest rate that I'll pay on his investments, 8%. And I'm teaching him how they can get their money back in case of an emergency and what the maximum loan to value is. And I let them tell me the frequency of payments. I really don't care. And so after 2 cups of coffee on Thursday afternoon, that $250,000 became $500,000 at the end of that conversation. Remember the magic, no deal attached to it. We're just talking about the program. And then, of course, a week goes by and I give Wayne and his wife the call with the good news phone call. And here we go to putting their money to work. So the indirect method is just asking people to spread the word as to the opportunity that you have. And by the way, Wayne did refer, I don't know how many new potential private lenders to us that still fund our deals today. That's the indirect method. How do you start conversations with the direct method? Well, I call that the magic question. And the magic question is, quote unquote, do you have investment capital or retirement funds not giving you a high rate of return safely and securely? Now, obviously, you're not going to start out a conversation with the magic question, right? You're just going to be in a conversation. I love bringing up the topic with by the way lead-ins. By the way. So here's a lead-in to bringing up the topic. Let's say, Mike, you and I are having coffee or we're having breakfast or whatever. We're at the ice cream church social, whatever. So we're hanging out and we're visiting, and I say, Mike, by the way, did you know there's a way people can earn unlimited money per year tax-free? They're not going to know the answer to that question. Of course, what I'm leading up to is how people can have a Roth IRA and a self-directed IRA account. That's all after-tax money, and whatever money they earn off of that money is tax-free. So, of course, they don't know the answer to that question. By the way, Mike, did you know there's a way people can earn unlimited money per year tax-free? Of course, they're going to say no. You're going to say no. I never heard of that. Then my follow-up question to that is, well, have you ever heard of self-directed IRA companies? And of course, they never heard of that either. So now we have a conversation about self-directed IRA companies and what they are, which now leads into private money. And then, well, do you have investment capital or retirement funds not giving you a high rate of return? So you see, I start out educating, right? That's the whole secret. I start out conversations educating people as to what this is, coming and leading from a servant's heart and not from a vantage point of need or want. I'm leading with value. Lead with value as to how you can serve them.
What's interesting that a lot of folks, if they step back and think about it, a lot of real estate investors, if you step back and think about it, is you're dealing with, I guess I'll say like smart people, but unsophisticated money. Like they don't have overhead. They don't have a lending department. They don't have all the stuff that you think of with a traditional lender. They don't think of points. They don't think of. They're comparing it to their next best alternative, which is a CD or the stock market or something more traditional, right? And so, and I think also a lot of these folks, you probably would agree with this, correct me if I'm wrong, a lot of them have an interest in being a real estate investor. And you're saying, well, here's a way to get involved without having to do any of the hard work. You're just the banker, which everybody wants to be the banker. Anyway, am I right?
They love the passive part of it. They don't have to find deals. They don't have to negotiate deals. They don't have to oversee rehab projects. All they do is wire money that they've got either in investment capital or retirement funds. Over half of our 47 private lenders are using their retirement funds that they already have in place. I've got retired teachers and every walk of life that you can think of. But they love the passive part. All they got to do is just sit back and collect checks or watch their account grow.
Yep. And Jay, I think for a lot of folks, I'm curious what your thoughts are on this. For a lot of folks that start raising private money, you go from you don't know what to do to it's real quick to get to I have more than I need, right? Because the word spreads, or same way you're asking here. So what do you do to keep folks' money busy? I know some people become a hard money lender too, and they sublend it out, and they do some different things to keep it busy, or you got to ramp up your business to keep it busy. But what are some things you can do to keep, you kind of have some level of obligation now that somebody's pledged some money towards you, and you got to keep it busy. So what are some tips and tricks for that?
Yeah, well, that's a great question because for years with me, it was a juggling act. It was a juggling act. I got too much money. I'm looking for deals to put the money to work.
Yeah.
And that's primarily been the problem. It's been a long time since I had deals and no money. And
Yeah.
the same thing for my community. So what I developed is I developed what's called your freedom number exercise. And the freedom number exercise takes about 15 minutes to go through. And the freedom number exercise actually drills down and calculates exactly how much private money that you need at your disposal. And that's based on your business.
Right.
That's based on, what's the average after repaired value, median price in your area, and how many deals are you doing a year, or do you realistically anticipate to do a year? That's going to tell you exactly how much private money you need.
Sure.
I have the problem today. It's a good problem. I've got about $1.2 million, what I call sitting on the shelf. So these are private lenders' money, principal investment amount that I've paid off. They're waiting for me to put the money back to work. And so, stop talking about it when you've got too much, because they're going to keep referring it to you anyway. I mean, it's been years since I even brought up the topic to anybody in conversation. I mean, I could provide that money for my mastermind community members, but I want them to raise their own. I don't want to match up money with people that need money. I did that. That did not go so well years ago.
Yeah.
People should be raising their own private money. And of course, that's what I teach at Real Estate Investors, what to do, how to raise your own very quickly without ever having to chase, beg, persuade or sell or talk anybody into anything. I mean, very quickly, you got a bunch of people chasing you instead of you chasing them.
Yeah. And Jay, a lot of folks don't know, but a lot of times this money's right under their nose, right? Like, where do the average real estate investor, where do they go to find these people? Because it's not some far off land, right?
No. There's three categories of where private lenders are or exist. Private lenders are, first of all, in your own warm market, your own connections, and they don't even know what private money is. They don't even know what a self-directed IRA is, until you teach them about it. So that's your own warm market, your own connections. Then, you're going to, if you really want to scale your business, you're going to run out of your own connections, your current connections. And of course, we all know there's a direct correlation between your network and your net worth, obviously. By the way, if you are a seasoned real estate investor, you need to be an investor fuel anyway and connect with all those other like-minded people that are investing in real estate. My most valuable assets are my fellow mastermind members. But anyway, the second category is what I call your expanded warm market. What in the world is that? Well, as I said, if you're wanting to scale your business, you're going to run out of your own connections and your own money if you're really wanting to scale it. So how can you expand your warm market? Well, I teach that all the time, but I can tell you one big tip. I've gotten millions of dollars in private money funding by becoming active in my local BNI, Business Networking International.
Mm-hmm.
And, even a little Morehead City, North Carolina, population 8,000 people. We started up a BNI in 2007 with 22 of us. And your local BNI chapter members, they refer prospects to you of whatever business that you're in.
Yeah.
And so expanded market. And then the third category of private lenders are existing private lenders. These are individuals that are already loaning money out to real estate investors. Well, where do you find them? Well, one place to find them is at self-directed IRA networking events. Here's what's interesting. Over 70% of account holders at self-directed IRA companies want to loan you money. They want to invest in your deals. They want to be passive real estate investing with their retirement funds. That's a great place to network with them. However, that's my least favorite source, and I'll tell you why. If I'm having a conversation with an existing private lender, they already know the game. They're already spoiled at 12%. So now this is a negotiation conversation.
Yeah.
I would much rather be a teacher in my warm market or my expanding warm market, and they are ecstatic with 8% and no points.
Yeah. Yeah. Once they in their mind refer to themselves or think of themselves as a lender, then they've kind of institutionalized themselves, right?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. Well, Jay, we could talk about this for hours probably. If folks want to learn more, I know you've got a book that you're willing to give out to listeners of our show for free, I believe. Tell us about where they can learn more and where they can, learn more about you.
Thank you, Mike. Well, I'm so excited about my most recent book. It's a national bestseller. It's called Where to Get the Money Now, and the subtitle is Where and How to Get All the Money You'd Want for Your Real Estate Deals without ever relying on institutional or hard money lenders. And the book is $20 at Amazon, but don't spend $20. Let me give you this book for free. Just cover shipping. And you can pick it up at www.jayconner.com/book. Now, I'm an ER, not an OR. JAYCONNER, which stands for extra revenue.com/book. jayconner.com/book. I'll autograph it. I'll rush it out to you, a priority mail. I'm also going to include 2 free tickets to the Private Money Conference, which is my live event I do 3 times a year. It's an amazing conference. I bring private money lenders to the event for you to network with, and it's a great event. I do it 3 times a year. 2 free tickets included with the book, jayconner.com/book. In addition to that, if you've enjoyed this show, and I know you have because Mike is an amazing host, if you've enjoyed this show and you want to learn more about private money in addition to the book, come check out my podcast. I'm in my 8th year of podcasting, 700 and some episodes. The name of the podcast is Raising Private Money with Jay Conner. And I'm always interviewing other people that have raised private money and how they go about raising private money for their real estate deals. Mike doesn't know it, but he's soon to be a guest on my show as well.
Oh, there we go.
He's raised a lot of private money, and I can't wait to interview Mike and turn the tables on him.
That sounds great. Sounds great. Well, Jay, good stuff. We'll add the links down below in the show notes for anybody that wants to, that wasn't able to write that down. But Jay, thanks so much for sharing your knowledge with us today. And the truth is you can never have enough money. And, there's a lot of folks that in that last downturn had their lines pulled from them. I have lots of friends that had their lines pulled from them. And so you might think you have enough money, but, the rug might get pulled out from under you. And, at the end of the day, we got to make as much money as we can in this market. And one of the ways to do it is to find cheaper access to capital and capital that's a little more friendly and fast, right? I mean, we didn't talk about it much, but with private lenders here, it doesn't take you 3 or 4 weeks to get it closed. This is like as soon as the title is clear type money, because those folks want to keep their money busy.
That's one of my 20 reasons I love private money is closing fast. We close our deals, and we offer to close our deals in as quickly as 7 days. Which gets more offers accepted.
Yep. Awesome. Well, Jay, thanks again for sharing some insights with us today on raising private money.
Thank you, Mike, for having me so much. God bless you.
Always good to see you. And everybody, hope you got some good insights from today. There's lots of ways to skin this cat. Private money is one of the best sources of money because it's cost effective and fast and friendly. So appreciate you guys a bunch. We'll see you on the next show. Thanks for joining us for today's show. You can learn more about the amazing benefits of the Investor Fuel Mastermind community, including surrounding yourself with hundreds of other rock stars, 100% financing on your deals, and members-only discounts from vendors you're likely already using that, as a member of Investor Fuel, will save you more than the cost of your membership. Visit investorfuel.com to learn more. You can also check out the show's notes for access to free resources, how to get access to world-class lead generation, and even how to work with me directly one-on-one.
Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss another episode. See you on the next show.